2, 1. Let's call this City Council meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. At this time, if you're able, would you please stand for our national anthem?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee and the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Bodner move the agenda. Are there any questions or changes to the agenda? All in favor? That's carried. I don't have any noted, but are there any disclosures of interest tonight? Seeing none, thank you. Approval of the minutes. We have the regular meeting of Council September 26th, 2023, and the statutory public meeting minutes of September the 26th, 2023. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Danch move those minutes. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Under staff reports and correspondence, we have the following items pulled: 8-1, 8-2, 8-4, 9-1, 9-2, 9-4, and 9-9. Any further items? If I could have Councillors Elliott and Bruno move the remainder of the items. All those in favor? That's carried. This time I'm going to the podium. So we do have one presentation this evening, Council, and those watching on WeeStream. Marathon swimming was an international sport 100 years ago. Long-distance swimmers were celebrated on the front pages of newspapers around the world. Starting in 1927, marathon swimmers from many countries came to the Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto to compete in the Professional Swim Championship of the World, a distance of 34 kilometers. For Councillor Bagu, that's 21 miles. In the 4 times he participated between 1927, when he was just 15, and in 1933, when he was 21, Isidore Sponder of Port Colborne finished in the top 3. He was a sports hero, the Christine Sinclair or Wayne Gretzky of his time. For Isidore Sponder, it was much about the sport, the commitment, the spirit of camaraderie among competitors, as it was to win the day. Isidore Sponder was a good guy, a kind, thoughtful, dedicated athlete who always gave his all, and Mr. Sponder passed away in 1986 at the age of 74. His family paid for a pool lift for handicapped swimmers in Centennial Pool and dedicated it to the people of Port Colborne. When Centennial Pool was decommissioned and the new pool opened in the Valley Centre 10 years ago in 2013, the Sponder family wanted to ensure Isidore's memory lived on. In the spirit, his family established the Isidore Sponder Memorial Trophy. The trophy is awarded to a member of the Port Colborne swim team, the Piranhas, who best reflects the same values he did: a competitive, encouraging spirit, dedication to the sport, and always giving 110%. On behalf of City Council and the citizens of Port Colborne, I'm proud to introduce the recipient of the 2023 Isidore Sponder Memorial Trophy, Diarella Alfonso. Diarella is 11 years old and is in grade 6 at Gordon Public School. She has 2 older brothers in university. She is also in competitive dance and is a member of school orchestra playing the violin. Diarella has been a participant on the Port Colborne Piranha swim team for a few years now and continues to improve her personal bests each swim meet. According to her coach, Jen Lauer, she models the qualities of the Sponder family would be proud of. Coach Jennifer Lauer, in her 32nd year as coach, led the Piranhas to victory over all swim teams from across Niagara. The Port Colborne Piranhas won the Niagara Region Summer Swimming League trophy again this summer, even with a little team of about only 20 competitive swimmers. The Piranhas were a young team this season. It's a rebuilding year, as many of the swimmers graduated out of the program and now swim for Port Colborne High School and Brock University. Swim meets this summer were particularly difficult due to the rain and thunderstorms the team had to endure at the outdoor pools. Before we bring Diarella up, we do have Isidore Sponder's nephew, Fred Horvath, who came all the way from Newcastle, Ontario, and Fred was here last year. If I could invite Fred up to say a few words.
Gotta raise these screens.
For the tall people, I guess. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf, Fred Horvath, why am I here? My mom was a Sponder. So my mom and dad, Jim and Louise Horvath, lived on Homewood Avenue. Isidore and his family lived on the east side at Atho Street, right on the corner. Isidore went to school at DeWitt Carter, and as the mayor indicated, he was competitively racing all the time, and he won 4 money prizes. Can you imagine in 1930, 10,000 people showing up at the CNE to watch a marathon swim? And the first prize was $10,000 back in 1930. And those races, 2 of those races, no one finished because of weather, temperature of the water, plus back then swimming, they had to put grease on their faces and their body to keep warm. It would get into their eyes and their eyes would close. And in one race, Isidore did not finish because the fact is his eyes were closed. And he says, "I'll be okay, don't worry, I'll be okay." We're so very honored that you keep this tradition. And you know, it's funny, in 1931, after he won the 2nd and then 3rd place, the mayor of the day, and I'm just reading Ruby Conway, and I think some of you remember Ruby Conway, her article in the Port Colborne News, I think it was October 1992, H.H. Noel was the mayor of the day. And last time I worked for the municipality, or sorry, thinking of my work, in Port Colborne, H.H. Noel was an alderman, if I recall right. So he sent messages. Mayor Saraceno was the mayor when we donated the lift, and he called him a legend. And I look at the Sports Hall of Fame wall. That's quite an honor. When you look at the McGowans, the Kennedys, and a whole bunch of people that are on that wall. So we're very honored, and we thank you for doing this again.
And Fred, just stay here because we'll have you help us with the with our trophy. So if at this time we could have Diarella come on up. We have a couple things here. So come on up here. So this is a trophy. Has Diarella Alfonso 2023 on it. This will stay in the cabinet at the Vale Center, in our trophy cabinet there. But let's, before I give you the other one, let's do a picture with this one, and then we'll give you your plaque. So let's go up front. Come on, Fred. If you want to go in the middle here, present that to you. Oh, definitely, sorry.
Like a coach in there.
Yes. And we'll just have one more here. The don't you guys stay there before, and we'll get some pictures. This is on behalf of the City of Port Colborne, presented to Diarella Alfonso, recipient of the City of Port Colborne Isidore Sponder Memorial Trophy for 2023, recognizing your competitive spirit and dedication to the sport of swimming. And this one you get to keep. You're welcome. Let's do some pictures. Slide in here, guys. Okay. You hang on to that. You want to say a few words at all? Okay. All right. Well, come on. Let's come back here because we're going to get your coach to say a few words, and I'm sure she's going to say some great things about you. Coach Moore?
Thank you. Diarella, by hands down, was the nominee for this year. All of the coaches agree that she is well deserving of the award, and we congratulate her very much. Well done, Diarella. You deserve it.
Again, thank you. One more. Smile. Great. Thank you, guys. You can go sit down. There. So this, again, we'll go back to the veil, and we'll put that proudly in our trophy case there. I'll go back to the front here. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I was going to say, how did we dust that off? But it looks like it's been dusted off pretty good. In all the years, I haven't seen it come forward, and I was just wondering if it's something you've got sort of rediscovered, or has it been being given out, just not at council?
Yeah, we did it last year at council.
God, I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 So it is annual, huh?
Yeah. It's an annual now, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
a number of names on there. I think during Mayor Maloney's term, it was brought back when the Valley Center opened.
Oh, okay.
And it, yeah, because of the connection with the Centennial Pool and then the new pool
Okay.
at Vale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you. There are no delegations this evening, and I do have a short mayor's report. This is for you, Chief. Welcome back, everyone. I trust you all enjoyed a happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving with family and friends. It's Fire Prevention Week in Port Colborne and across Canada and the United States. The theme this year is Cooking Safety Starts With You. Pay attention to fire prevention. Cooking is the leading cause of home fires and fire injuries, with nearly half of all fires involving cooking equipment. Never leave food unattended on the stove or in the oven. Turn those pot handles toward the back of the stove. Keep a lid nearby when cooking, so if something does catch fire, you can simply slide a lid over the pan and turn the burner off. We all remember the rule about smoke detectors. Every home in Ontario must have a smoke detector on every level of the home. That's the law. When it comes to fire safety, pay attention to fire prevention. The first artwork for our annual Christmas card contest was turned into my office last week by a 3-year-old. One of the most enjoyable things I do all year is choose from hundreds of designs submitted by elementary school children. Last year we had a record number of submissions. Let's see if we can top that this year. Please do your design on a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, any color. You can use crayons, markers, chalk, pastels, and paints, anything you choose, as long as you make it a Port Colborne theme. A clear design or a scene with bright, bold colors seems to work best. Please bring them to City Hall by 4 p.m. on Friday, October the 20th. You can do it on your own at home or as a class project. And make sure you put your name, your school, and your grade on the back of the piece of paper. And we've reached out to all the schools in Port Colborne asking for their participation. The children whose artwork is chosen will be invited to come to council to be recognized, and they'll be invited to join council on the float in the lighted Christmas parade on December the 2nd. I look forward to seeing all the talent and creativity. Mark your calendars and fill a few extra grocery bags as best you can. The Lions Food Drive is a week from Saturday on October the 21st. The shelves at the Reach Out Center need filling now more than ever. Those of us who are able to help do as much as we can for our neighbors who need us. Port Colborne has always been a generous community. Place donations on your doorstep by 9 a.m. Saturday, August 21st. Lions and volunteers will drive every street in the city to collect your donation. If you live outside the urban boundary, please drop non-perishable groceries at the Christian Life Assembly on Barrack Road at Highway 58. Cash and checks are also accepted during the 21st. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, many thanks to all of you. One thing though, guys, is Pie Guys decided they wanted to do a fundraiser in Port Colborne. They want to raise $10,000 for homelessness and drug addiction. They have the I Love Port Colborne rubber wristbands you can buy. They come in 3 sizes. So for those that are out there, they want to donate to a good cause, stop by Pie Guys and pick up a bracelet. And they're just one of many businesses in Port Colborne that do great work for charity within the confines of our borders here in the city. And Regional Councillor Davies is not here this evening. Are there any Regional Councillor questions? Seeing none, okay. Staff remarks. CAO?
No, none for me.
Clerk's office. Chief?
You stole my thunder, Mr. Mayor.
That's okay. You can. Hey, nothing wrong with repeating it. If you want to repeat it, give the fire perspective. That's even better.
Now that I'm on the spot, through the mayor, just a reminder. I mean, I do hate that there's 1 week a year that we focus on fire safety. It should be 52 weeks out of the year, but just take that little extra time. We're getting into the heating season. We're going to have some wood stoves going, and just this is when we get a little complacent with holidays and everything else. So I just ask that the residents of Port Colborne take their time, be diligent with their fire safety in their homes. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Joe, anything to report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple announcements. Elm Street road closure. There will be a road closure scheduled to facilitate the construction of the Elm Street rail crossing. The closure will begin October 19th at 7 a.m., reopen October 20th at 5 p.m. The road closure will be kept within the limits of the Park Street and Princess Street, meaning there will be no residents or businesses within the closure. Signage will be located at Kalali Street West and Clarence Street, diverting traffic to King Street in an effort to avoid having traffic detour through the surrounding local roads. Staff are currently drafting notices for nearby businesses and residents, and we'll make sure they're delivered before the end of the week. Another road closure we want to let the public know about is H.H. Knoll Field and Road closure. Another road closure has been scheduled for October 17th to 19th at H.H. Knoll Park to install a concrete speed hump. The speed hump will be located directly beside the boat ramp and will connect the existing trail on the perimeter of the park to the newly constructed interior section. During this time, residents looking to access the southern parking lot will be directed to use the Elm Street entrance to the park as opposed to the Fielden entrance. All amenities at the park will remain unaffected during the construction.
Great, thanks. Gary, anything to?
Question from Councilor.
Oh, sorry, Council.
Joe, I'm sure you're aware, thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the MTO has had an issue with closing both north-south routes. And I'm just wondering, whilst they're quite a ways along, and the other day when I took 58 part of the way on the shave and pave, it was okay from Nugent Road at Canal Block, but I'm just wondering, they say that they want a month to do 58. Is there any way we could make sure that we don't cut off Elm Street before 58 is fully paved? Should be done by that time, but could we keep that in the back of our minds?
Absolutely.
There's no planned work at the north end of Elm, is there?
No, not to the best of my knowledge.
Thanks, Matt. Okay. Gary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Just a couple of quick housing-related updates. You may have noticed that there have been some Housing Accelerator Fund announcements in London Vaughan, Hamilton over the last few weeks. The Housing Accelerator Fund is a federal program. It's administered by CMHC. Council may recall that the city submitted an application to the Housing Accelerator Fund back in mid to late August. Our application is under review. I think the feds are working with some larger municipalities, and we hope to have some good news on the city's application this fall. Two other quick things. Premier Ford at the AMO conference in mid-August announced the Building Faster Fund, a new 3-year $1.2 billion program to help municipalities hit their housing targets. A portion of these funds, about 10%, has been earmarked for small rural municipalities. Just to let council know that we haven't received any details on that. Rest assured, when we do have details, we'll certainly submit an application. Finally, just wanted to note that the Minister of Municipal Affairs has asked municipal heads of council to provide comments on the province's task force on housing affordability, and city staff are working together on a response for the mayor, and that will be going in later this week. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, no other staff, no staff online. Council remarks. I don't know if I started to my right last meeting or my left. I'll start to my right. Councilor Aquilina.
I'm good. I had a couple conversations today with staff, and they were very helpful, so I'm good. Thanks.
Great, thank you, thank you. Councilor Borgard, welcome back.
Thank you. I've already spoken with some staff about some matters, so I'm good today.
Thank you. Councilor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I always have something to say. First of all, I want to thank you very much, Parks and Rec, for keeping that splash pad open during the hot weather. I know we try to close it for ease of season, but you guys kept it open for the longest time, and I'm sure the kids really appreciated that. So thanks again. My next one, I should have said something when the fire chief was talking. Does the fire department still have the smoke and monoxide alarms program?
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, we sure do. We are still going door to door, but we do encourage residents to give us a call, and we will come out and make sure that they're compliant.
Councilor?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two other things, Mr. Mayor. I think it was late spring, Councilor Bruno brought up at council regarding the parking enforcement for the launch ramp, the trucks and cars with the trailers on it, and would it be possible for bylaw to give a verbal staff update next meeting on the parking enforcement that we had this past spring and summer at the launch ramp?
Chief?
Through the mayor to council, we sure can do that.
Okay.
Just a verbal, correct?
Just verbal,
All right.
yep.
Okay, thank you. Councilor?
Okay, thank you. Last one, Mr. Mayor, I promise.
That's okay.
Request of service. I don't quite know who's actually in charge of it, but I've had quite a few comments from residents when they put a request in. They asked to be contacted on the results of the staff looking into it. I'm not talking bylaws, because I know bylaw doesn't contact a complainer regarding a complaint, but there's other ones regarding trees and boulevards and stuff that the resident does ask that somebody talk to them about when the city investigates, and they're not getting the results back, Mr. Mayor. And then they call me, and I got to call somebody, and then they do get a hold of them afterwards. But it shouldn't be something I should have to get involved in, Mr. Mayor. So.
I'll go to the CAO.
Through your worship to Councillor Bagu, full agreement that it's not something that should be the council member's responsibility. It should be handled by City Hall staff. I can clarify by telling you that the citywide system, or at least the customer-facing side, is handled on the first floor. We did have a customer service manager in the past. When that person left the city to take employment elsewhere, we restructured, and we've given that responsibility to Andrea Hawkins. So she is the manager of revenue. There's probably something more fancy than that, as well as customer service, both combined on one desk, basically. In terms of assigning the jobs, that happens in Public Works or bylaw, wherever the job is meant to be assigned. But I will talk to Andrea tomorrow and see if we can make sure that we get to the bottom of who should be closing that feedback loop to make sure that the person does get their final response, whether that comes back to the first floor or whether that stays in the department that did it. So for example, if it was a tree fell in a park, but it was reported to the first floor of City Hall, do the tree crews and their supervisors get back to the resident, or does the first floor get back to the resident, as long as someone's doing it? Because it sounds like it's falling through the cracks. So I'll take that back tomorrow.
Okay, Councillor?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. It's not necessarily a tree falling down, as I reported. It was city tree, example, somebody thinks a tree on the city property in front of their house is dangerous to their house, they call, and then they want to know results. Is the city going to take the tree down or not? And that's been the problem, Mr. Mayor. And internally, they are going to take it down, but they just don't tell the resident they're taking it down 3 or 4 months from now. So that's when I get the phone call, Mr. Mayor. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, CAO. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Last week, Councillor Danch, myself, and Bram Cott from Economic Development had the privilege of representing the mayor at the open house and ribbon cutting for the Dinsmore home construction development on Hillside in the Meadow Heights subdivision. The owner was there, representatives of his staff. We got a great tour of the show home there. First-class product. Certainly, they've done well with in the interim from a construction basis. No complaints from the neighbors there. Kept the street clean. I think they're putting in their last show home. The foundation was in. I think they're going to have like 7 or 8 there fully built. Yeah, encourage members of the public or from outside of Port Colborne, if they're looking for a quality home, they certainly showed us one. So that's all I have on that. Thank you. My second item is actually in that area. The other phase of Meadow Heights, this will be to the fire chief, but if it could be passed on to building or if Denise is online. So I had a complaint from a neighbor on Apollo who backs onto that subdivision, and the street lights in that development, although we haven't assumed the street are not on, but there is actually a couple occupants of homes in there now. So if you went there right now, you see some lights on, a car in a driveway, all that kind of stuff. And it'd have to be dangerous if you were the fire department going through there. I mean, it is black in there. And when you come up around the curve, like you've got a large container there, then you've got a skip, and you've got stuff on the side of the road. And I know that on Hillside, even though that's under construction, the street lights are on. I don't know, Chief, even if you have one of the guys out there right now, it's your practice night, isn't it? I don't know how that happens, whether it's planning or public works that gets those lights turned on. But yeah, I think it's a safety concern in there. And the neighbor was really concerned that there were cars driving up through there and it's pitch black. And I'm sure if you guys had to arrive there, it wouldn't be the greatest situation with, particularly with stuff still parked on the construction road.
Chief?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno, we can take a look into that. Quite honestly, I'm not 100% sure, other than when they do become occupied, that goes through MPAC and that system starts and our dispatch is notified. So we do know they're living there, but we'll work on getting some lights on.
Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It is the developer's responsibility to work with CMP to get that turned on, but I'll follow up with planning and we can make sure that that gets done as soon as possible.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
I'm good. I bother staff a lot through emails and calls and whatnot, and been pretty happy with what's been going on, so thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Councillor Danch.
Like my Hungarian friend there, we've always got something to say. So I spoke with the chief earlier, and I don't know if anybody's been down, but the old Rossman's Furniture Building there, it's got quite the chimney lean to it. So I don't know, talk with Scott there, and he's gonna send a little memo out and make sure that it's gonna be safe and not go crashing through the building or anybody else. The other concern I had was Nickel Beach. People want to take their animals for a walk on the beach. The beach is locked. I just wondered if there's any way we could get a 7 to 4 kind of opening on the beach for some of our dog walkers. I mean, it's as much as it's been crappy the last couple days, not every day's not bad. So I just wondered if there's any opportunity for some of our beach walkers to stretch their legs. Just passing on the info, please.
It is back open. It was closed for a couple of days. It's been unlocked. The man gate.
What time?
I was there Sunday for the same reason, to have a look, and it was open, and this was about 8:30.
Yeah, I don't, that man gate's not locked.
The man gate's not locked?
No, man gate's are, but the man gate's
Okay,
not.
well, those 7 people that are watching, I hope you hear that, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hoyle.
As usual, I have nothing really to say, so.
Thank you, Councillor.
Staff's been taking care of everything for me, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar. All set? Good, thank you. On to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Bring these up. The first item is the Fleet Services Update. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2023-185 be received. The Council approved the transfer of $49,195 from the General Tangible Capital Asset Reserve to the Capital Fund to offset cost escalations on a single and tandem axle dump truck. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Danch move that. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess, to Joe, it's my understanding that these trucks take approximately 1.5 to 2 years from order to receive. Could you give me validity on that, please?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have a commitment that the vehicle will be ready in 365 days from the time of order. So we should be good before the next winter season.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Danch.
Thank you to Joe there. I just purchased a truck myself for my own business. Delivery time is not quite as lengthy. I just wonder if you've got all the T's crossed on these things. I mean, we have these trucks in the city. I look at them, I think sometimes that, you know, the box on them is kind of useless because the payload is minimal. You see them going down Highway 58 to the dump and stuff like that on a regular basis. We're going to get something like this tandem axle one, which is, you know, 2 sets of wheels, of course. We're going to get a little bit bigger box on this, so we won't be running around quite as much with nothing on it.
Joe?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, our fleet manager has reviewed the specs and a lot of the needs that our operations staff require, and we're confident that we're going to get the vehicle that we need.
I didn't ask you this, but what manufacturer truck are these?
Both are Freightliners,
okay.
And I believe the one has a Cummins engine, and the other one, the tandem, is a Detroit. So both good quality motors.
Okay, so they're like a T8 then?
I believe so.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I need.
Great. Any further questions? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Joe. I guess along the same lines as Councillor Danch was saying, I looked at the price and it was like, for an extra $37,000 or $47,000, 10% more, we get a tandem as opposed to single axle. And the same thought entered my head. That'll make one tandem axle that we have, and the rest are single axles. Yes?
Yes, I believe so.
Do we need more tandems, or is the single axles better for what we use them for? Just for the price difference, a 10% increase for a much larger truck.
Yes.
I just wondered why we were going with the smaller one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. a lot of the needs for our operations, like for snow removal and a lot of the work that we do, a tandem would be a little bit large, so the single axle will be more useful. But obviously, in like a ditching job would obviously make more sense using the tandem. But for the majority of our day-to-day needs, with snow plowing and salting and sanding, the single axles are more practical.
Okay.
All set?
Yeah, just a couple other questions too. Where it says that the borrowing and the financing part of that, the vehicles that we have currently that we're taking out of service, we are going to sell them, and those funds go back into the purchase, off the purchase price? Is that what we do with the money?
Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's more of a finance question, but I do believe that we do sell our vehicles, and the money that we receive from that sale would go into our reserve. So the same account.
Okay. And just for the general public, just quick highlights of why are we replacing the vehicles that need to be replaced? How old are they? What are the significant issues with them that we need to be replacing them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for sure. The two current vehicles that we have that are scheduled for replacement that we have on order, the one's a 2004 Sterling, and the tandem is a 2007 Sterling. So both are significantly of age, and we're doing regular maintenance on them. So at some point, the amount of maintenance costs are going to exceed the value of the vehicle and keep putting good money into bad. So at this time, we have a fleet replacement program, which we're confident that at this time we need to replace these two vehicles.
Okay, perfect. That's good.
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8.2, Pleasant Beach retaining wall remediation. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2023-197 be received, and that Council direct staff to replace the retaining wall located at the Pleasant Beach Road end for the total estimated cost of $1 million, and that the project be funded from the General Tangible Capital Asset Reserve. If I could have Councilors Bruno and Aquilina move that. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Know this area quite well, an old backyard of mine, and had to deal with lots of sand dune erosion and putting in reinstatements and armor stone. Through you to Joe or Matt, just concerned, took a drive down there on Sunday, had a look at the piece that's out, and I guess what's concerned me is we have a 66-foot road allowance, but we don't need to have a 66-foot road allowance. So the idea of the armor stone at 75-year life versus 100-year life, I get the issue of, when you tie it into the existing groundworks on the east side of the road allowance, sure, that can be better. You're outlining an opportunity if there isn't sufficient space or approval there from the neighbor that you will go to option 2. And so I'm wondering just what that does, if you know, to the overall price of armor stone versus the sheet wall.
Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. From the best of my knowledge at this time, from the information we received, the armor stone is about 2/3 of the cost of the actual replacement of the sheet wall. And again,
thank you, Jim. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and that's based on a preliminary estimate. Once we get into the detailed design, we'll know more.
Right. Thank you. Just secondly, I'm just wondering, even before getting into the investigation into that east wall there, the ground and the sand, could you look at, because I have talked to a fellow who does this, and one of the possible ways is you do have the possibility of scouring in behind the armor stone. You do have the possibility of water racing up the road allowance and drawing it back out and undermining that, which is tougher to do with a sheet wall. But one of the thoughts this gentleman had was where you're connecting from the existing sheet wall to the open space is to kind of do like a knuckle out with sheet wall, and then you go back to armor stone, so that if you can slow down the direct hit, you need a coastal engineer to decide how those waves go, but basically the armor stone can be in behind, and then what he had suggested was, you let sand build up against it and do dune grasses, so maybe you reinstate it, because at $1 million, it's a lot of money. If that goes down to 660,000 or 700,000, that's a substantial saving. So I guess I just didn't want the lack of something to knit in with the tiebacks to be the only determinant of that. So I'm just wondering if we could look into that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll definitely look into several options and look at the most cost-effective solution.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure of talking with Joe earlier today, and I just thought, because it is $1 million that's quoted in this report, it might be good for the public to know the background and the liability of not replacing this, and what that would mean for the city, if Joe or Matt could speak to that.
Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is part of the city owned assets. Not replacing it would, due to the location, would potentially cause some liability issues with the neighboring property and even with city-owned lands. So it is recommended that we replace it or come up with a solution to repair it as soon as possible. And city staff are trying to have this completed before the December 25th, like before Christmas, before the end of the year, just to make sure that when these storm season comes in, that hopefully we can have it done by then and save some further potential damages.
Okay, Councillor?
Thank you. Yeah, because if I'm correct, I believe this December storm is what caused the erosion in the first place. So.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure there was several storms that would have caused over time, so I'm not 100% sure when that actually took place, but it's likely that a lot of damage was caused by that storm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hoyle.
Through the mayor, I think most of my questions have actually just been answered. The other thing I was wondering is, do we have an idea when that wall was put up? Approximately?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We did do some research, but no, we're not 100% sure when or who installed the wall at whatever time. So.
But it is definitely our wall?
It's definitely a city-owned asset, and yeah, we definitely need to make sure that we maintain it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Danch.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a place on the lake, and I had to do a little wall repair there last year. We've got two prices here. We've got 4 3/4 for the armor side of things, and then we got the sheet pile for $600,000. I know my own wall is well, we've got close to 200 feet that we had to do, and I just find the initial cost to be considerably higher than I think it should be. We did the armor stone, and we tied it back with a concrete pad and several concrete trucks and cranes and every other darn thing. And I just, as much as Mr. Rankin is certainly a respected lakefront fixer-upper here, I
really kind of wonder if we need to spend $1 million on this. My wall's 6 feet high with a concrete top. I think Matt said you guys are going about 12 feet high, so double the price or double the height of what I have, but I still think the price is a little exorbitant, but you know, that's why we sit here every other week, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baggy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, so I guess, Joe, how far from the wall is the property line to the eastern neighbor?
Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure the exact distance. It's not, it's fairly close. I would say within a meter.
I'm just wondering, because is the onus all on the city to put a retaining wall, or is some of the onus on the neighbor also to contribute to save his property also? I don't know if anybody's looked into that, but does the city have to bear the whole cost? Because I see the wall on his beach side has the same plate that's on the city side. So I'm just wondering about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it is a city-owned property, and to the best of my knowledge, it would be the city's responsibility.
Could we just look into where the property line is, though? I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Set? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. through you to Joe and Matt, because it's tag team night, so. Just picking up on what Councillor Bagu said, that was one of my biggest questions, is how come we assume 100% liability for this? When the house was built, did they not see that the land had the possibility of erosion, and because we've got the wall there that holds it up, we have to assume, or who said that we're on the hook for all the liability? If that house wants to stay there, shouldn't they assume some of the liability to reinforce their property? They're on lakefront. It has the same possibility of a storm going up and eroding their land as well as ours. But we're the one that has to pay full pop to put this wall back in.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff will definitely look at the responsibility, and if we could get a legal opinion to be sure that that we would have to be fully responsible, but we can follow up with the council.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Because option C was to reinstate the dune without a wall. So if we don't have a wall and we put the dune back in, the chances of erosion occurring is much greater. Does that mean our liability is that much higher? And how much are we responsible for to protect the neighbor's land? Shouldn't they be responsible to protect their own property against erosion? You're on lakefront. Councillor Danch just said he built the wall. I don't understand why, when you're on lakefront with the possibility of erosion, you don't have to look after your own property.
I could probably give you a better answer than staff, is the fact that between a dune that was there when that property was acquired and the cottage was built, there was no issue of erosion. But we own the land directly next to them that is now eroded away. That's our land. We got to make sure we protect our land so it doesn't erode his land. He's not going to drive a wall in on the earth above, and then you're going to have 6-8 feet of space between his wall and then what our wall would be. I mean, I know where you're going, Councillor, but you got to remember, when all this was there was a dune, pretty big dune there. I remember as a kid, and I think Councillor Bruno could probably remember the dune there when he worked at Shirkston Shores, or for Shirkston Shores. There's been a lot of changes over the years, but the city has established that's their area that has to be protected, and they put this wall in. I would assume that wall probably went in the 80s when the first real big storm devastated the lakefront along here. I grew up on the lake, and we lost we lost tons of sand dune from our property at Cedar Crest, just over by Cement Plant Road. And I think that's about when that wall was put in, because most of the steel walls you see go back that far. So, quite frankly, that's not that long ago, and you've got that steel wall collapsing. So, 100 years out of a steel wall, most of the wall that all our neighbors put in, that we all paid for back in around 83, 84, somewhere in there, is now being replaced. So I don't think you'll ever get 100 years out of a steel wall. I don't know where that comes from, but anyways, but it's our property. I mean, this is our property collapsing, which is now going to damage the neighbor's property. It's not like his edge is there and we're putting a wall up. We own the property between where the road allowance is. So we've created the situation, not the neighbor. That's where I think this would come from. I mean, I'm sure if we went to our lawyers, we could get a whole legal advice on this, but I mean, just on a practical basis, this is our land that we're protecting so that it doesn't damage your next door neighbor.
Okay.
I guess that's hard for me to understand, because we're protecting our land, but in the process, you protect the neighbor who doesn't incur any cost to have their land protected. Because in the long run, we're protecting ours, and by protecting ours, we protect theirs for them. But they don't incur any cost. There's no cost sharing. It's all on us, which, if you protect one, you protect both. So in order for the neighbors to be safe, we have to be safe. So it just seemed to me
how far down the road do you go to the next property, because as
yeah,
you say, properties, everybody should have a percentage of.
Yeah,
I mean, you get some of those storms that can wipe that whole area out pretty quick because it's just sand.
And I guess when I took a look at the first cost at $1 million, my first response was no, and I still think no for the $1 million, because it's just, there's so many things that we need to fix in this city that taxpayers that are paying this bill want fixed first, because out of all the people in the city, probably 99.9% derive no benefit from this wall. At $1 million expenditure, I'm sure once this hits the papers and whatnot, we'll say you're going to spend $1 million to build a wall that is out at the end of a road on the road allowance that most people will never see and use or have any need for. And yet we've got pipes that are leaking and several other things that we've got to look at. So the cost of it is prohibitive to me. I would think the cheapest way that we can do it, that is going to last for a number of years, I will go with that instead of the $1 million wall. I just can't support that, and that's nothing against you guys, but that's me looking after some money. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, Councillor Bruno? Oh, sorry, CAO.
Sure. Just through your worship, to the different councillors who had questions about how much liability, is it a shared liability? I'm sorry to jump in front of Councillor Bruno, but I think in case we go further down that road, we do have a legal opinion, and normally we give a legal opinion to council in a closed session, but I'm comfortable saying in open session that we have assured ourselves, I have a letter from our law firm that says that they are, sorry, I can use the exact words, of the opinion that the city is responsible for repairing the wall and maintaining the lateral support provided to that adjacent owner. And they talk about, even though there's a mutual benefit to the city and the neighbor, there is 100% responsibility on the city. It's not, and I know that the conversation from Councillor Elliott sort of took a different path, and it is frustrating. It's frustrating for staff because we have a lot of other things that we would like to do with that budget. We have priorities of our own too. And I almost likened it to a situation where, we put $1 million into something underground, some subterranean infrastructure that doesn't really get us the bang for the buck or have, a big company name sponsoring it on Main Street. But it is something that we have satisfied ourselves we're responsible for. And I think that's a good idea to start talking about, is there an option for a more cost-effective implementation than the more expensive one, and so on. But I think the question of is the city responsible for the cost has already been answered, at least to staff from the law firm. So, and if you want to talk about that more, I guess we could go into closed session and I could share that.
Councillor Bruno.
To Councillor Elliott's point, here's the rub with this. If you go down there, is you don't have. If you look at some of our other road allowances, so let's take at the end of Point Avenue Road, or some of the ones that, don't have 66 feet open. Some of them you go up like this and in, and it's all treed and it's built over. If you go to Wildwood, the sand basically piles right between the two fences, to the extent that sometimes it piles that you can walk over the fence from the Shirkston side to the Wildwood Road allowance, from the Wildwood Road allowance to the cottages there. That doesn't get gouged out like that because it's basically filling sand from one side to the other. This really isn't the normal armor stone protection wall, because as the diagram shows, that's front facing on the lake. This is the run up to the side of that. So A, you don't have the same force. B, you have it come up. And so I think the real question becomes here is how wide and how protected do you want Pleasant Beach road allowance, that's 66 feet. If you think about it now, you've got Pleasant Beach Campground owned by Shirkston, so they can go the other side of the fence, they can go on the Shirkston side. But you've got 3 or 4 fire lanes down there, and I suspect you probably have a Port Colborne citizen or housing. You might have 60 odd places down there that are using that road allowance. So you can give them less of a road allowance. You can let the road allowance fill in with sand, and that'll give that side lots of protection. You'll also have a more gradual slope. If you made the 66 feet 45, 40 feet, 30 feet, because now you can start at 66, go to 30, and fan back out, if you look at that diagram, to 66 for the rest of the runway down to the water. The more gradual you make that slope, protecting that, that cottage, the less money it'll probably cost you because you're using a lot of land to shore it up before you get to stone. So I think you have to ask the first question is, do you want Pleasant Beach road allowance to be like other open road allowances that are the full 66 feet? If you do, you probably got to go with number 2. If you want it narrower, you could probably go with number 3. But that's something that's very hard to decide sitting here, and why, staff can go down there and look at it. I mean, I'm with Councillor Elliott to do it at the lowest cost but still protection. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to guess if it's a 1 in 100 year storm, and even if that will do it. If you look at the Shirkston Shores side, there's been sand dunes there for a zillion years. I can remember one time when after a storm we went out there and it wasn't a dune, it was a cliff. Everything got pulled out of the lake, and the sand was like this kind of a wall with trees on it still. In a very short period of time, it fills up and is back to that. If you want to take the gamble that you fill it more with sand, like if you go down there, you're walking at the road edge like this, and then you're going down, and it's quite a length, that road allowance. So you've got a lot of land there that you can play with and make more sand pushed up against there and still have a pretty decent beach area, particularly below where the steel wall reinstates itself. So I guess, bottom line is to Councillor Elliott's point, we could leave it to these guys and say, look, you know what, it's sort of option 2 and below. But you know, frankly, I'll ask the guys this, but I'm wondering if at $1 million there isn't a fair bit of contingency there, because it does seem high. Joe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the $1 million came from the original, we hired an engineer to come out when we first saw it, and it was a very, very high level cost estimate. As you can see, we're likely going to spend a lot less than that. However, depending on the extent of the repair and everything that's included in permits and whatnot, we will look at the best solution at the most cost-effective solution. And I don't believe that it'll be $1 million.
One last question, if I could, Mr. Mayor. So I recognize that you've brought this forward because you want to get it started right away. But there's a fair bit of legwork within 2 weeks, although I suspect if you're going to go with armor stone, they'll order it. If you're going to go with steel, they have to order it. I just don't know if 2 weeks is too long to not slow the potential down, but give us a better idea of what the two options are. Like, I know we're getting late in the season. I don't know if you've sort of kind of reserved a window of time with the contractor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We're in the process of finalizing the design, so we're still not certain if the sheet pile is even possible to reinstall, depending on the depth of the rock and some of the challenges that are in place. So we haven't finalized the answer yet until we do further design work.
Okay, thank you. That's enough for now. Thanks.
Great. I'm like Councillor Elliott. I'm not in favor of $1 million on this. I'm more of a combination of item 2 and 3. The only issue, if you reinstate the sand dune, you've got to also now deal with your neighbor to your west, which is Shirkston Shores, because if you don't protect your west wall or west side of that sand dune, if we reinstate the sand dune, I think you're gonna have to work with them so that they armor rock that side, or we armor rock it, and maybe we share the cost, because then all you'll get is backwash and it'll just wash on around. But I'd like to see us reinstate that whole sand dune. I think Councillor Bruno made the best point, is where the more sand we can get in there with a protected wall in front, the east side doesn't need to be as big. So you can actually bring the armor rock up less at the front of the beach and then coming across the front, because you're going to have to protect the front of that dune again, and then tie in with the west neighbor, which is Shirkston at this point. I mean, you can see some rock that, or some pretty large armor rock that they've put in now that with their fence on it was stuck out a lot higher a few years ago, where now it's mostly buried. So you can see that sand does come and go. We all know that that's how it works, but I mean, you could get a storm this year that'll rip the rest of that whole bank right out of there. I mean, we know the south end of that wall is still standing, but that could be gone in a Friday night storm that we've seen over the last little while. So I'm just, again, I think Councillor Bruno's right. I mean, I think, you know, is 2 weeks going to put us that far behind where maybe you can come back with a combination of 2, 3 option for council to at least look at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for sure we can do that.
Councillor Bruno?
I was just going to say, in some respects, we're fortunate because on the west side where Shirkston is, it's just their beach, and that's been cut out. So there's nothing really to protect other than a frost fence, right? That's on those. So in that regard, protecting that flank is kind of a non-issue.
No, you're right. But if you don't, you're going to have to. If you reinstate the dune, you're going to have to tie the wall back to the cottage colony building that's been there for 100+ years. Because if you don't,
that part's already filled.
I know, but you got to protect yourself to that, or the water just circles around and sucks your sand out from behind your wall, and then your wall collapses.
That was the idea of the knuckle.
And Councillor Danch has probably seen that near his cottage where neighbors haven't tied things in, and it just gets in behind.
Yep.
Out at the old Lakeshore Road in Wainfleet, one of the neighbors said, I'm not doing that, and decided not to, and what happened? Water came in and took out his whole cottage because he wouldn't tie his wall in. I mean, I've grown up with this, and Frank's done this, spent gobs of money at his cottage on this. So we know what can happen. I just, to me, reinstating that sand dune and bringing it back, I remember the days when it was higher, but even this year, I think we've had somebody that wasn't supposed to go in there actually went in and took out sand when they shouldn't have. But anyways, that's another subject that staff's working on. Sure. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be a better option anyways. CAO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, would it be possible to secure, this, I think the purpose of the report was to secure funding up to $1 million, and then we could come back and provide council with an update on the selected choice or options on which methodology we want to move forward with. I guess this would allow us to move forward with some of the design work and understanding that we would move ahead with, again, just supporting the funding requirement.
I think, and sort of through the worship to follow on Joe's point, I think that's sort of what I was going to say. There's a lot of good commentary here. I think staff has a good picture of what council wants. We know no one's happy to have to do this job. No one on staff and no one on council. We do have the funds available in city reserves. We do have a legal opinion that the work ought to proceed. I'm reluctant to get into the engineering today, and I know that some of the council members have a lot of background in that area. That my waterfront experience is more to the west when you get out towards Reeves Bay and Crescent Heights and sort of some of the different break walls there that aren't on the corner of a road allowance. The reason we use these engineers is because when they design a bridge, a road, a highway off-ramp, a break wall, they take on some professional liability, and for us to override or change their designs would attract that liability back to the city, which I'm reluctant to do. But I think if the staff here understand sort of what council is looking for, a more natural, like let's solve the problem, but let's also see if we can get back to nature a little bit there, get back to some of the historic footprint of the area, and at the same time controlling cost and making sure that we're going to have an effective solution that's also recognizing sort of the past, way back to when there was dunes with grass on them, and the grass was helping to hold it together and give it stability too. So I think to Joe's point, if we can sort of give him the marching orders to go forward, that he's got an upset limit on that budget, but knowing that we're not going to sign a contract until council sees a final design, and maybe there are a few more options before council by that time.
Further questions? Councillor Botter?
I think everything was said that I was going to say, but I'm pretty sure we're going to do this. It is, in fact, we're not going to do it. It's just a matter of how much we're going to spend. So it makes so much sense in simply giving staff an up limit, and then they come back with something like $200,000. No, but something reasonable.
Reasonable.
No.
Councillor.
Through you to Joe and Matt, I think the most important thing when you get back with the contractor is just to let him know that, I don't know, maybe in his mind's eyes, he's thinking he's got to create what was there, and that was a pure run of 66 feet. And that isn't what he has to create. That's what was there. Just one last comment.
Actually, it's longer than 66 feet. The width is 66 feet. It runs from the front to the lake, so it's, the length is longer than 66 feet. So
66 feet wide. It doesn't have to be 66 feet.
So I've got Councillor Bruno and Aquilina moving the motion that's in front of us. After hearing what you guys have said and what the CAO has said and what staff have asked for, we should amend this because it really, I think we should amend it to something that the CAO had, to something that council directs staff to replace the retaining wall located at the Pleasant Beach Road end for an up limit to $1 million and report back to council prior to going to tender, because I think you have to do it before you go to tender, with a report with the options that they feel best suits the Pleasant Beach Road end. Does that capture what everybody was asking for? I think. Does All right. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, to your point, it's a good one, is, you know, if we tell them it's sort of a combination of 2 or 3, that's different than the way the report reads. The report reads to me that you're going to go down there and do these test holes, and if you can get into the side wall of that dune, then you're going with option 1 and spending the whole amount. And I don't think that's what we're saying anymore.
No, I think staff has where council wants to go. I mean, they may come down and put a smaller steel wall in, but filling a lot of sand in there and reestablishing that dune without running that wall approximately 100 feet or more from the road where the road actually ends to the almost the lakefront, where it ties in with the neighbor's wall at the lakeside. So I think if they can alleviate, in fact, going back to what you said, fill that area in, and then all of a sudden you have a wall that ties back, protects that area, then it could be obviously a lot lower price if they're not putting in a 100-foot wall, we'll say, and they only put in a 50-foot wall. Joe, do you understand where we're kind of leaning here?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. What we can do is speak with the engineering firm that kind of gave us these prices and look at different options. I would say the replacement, I think the original intent, the original option of replacing that retaining wall was to get the most life expectancy of the wall. I think they said it was 100 years that you were going to get. I think the armor stone will also create more maintenance work for city staff and ongoing maintenance over the years. So I think we can come back and provide different options, the best that, you know, from what we discussed tonight, and try and come up with a more detailed cost estimate for these different options, and come back to council, let you know what our recommendations are. But again, I'm going to be relying on these engineers that design this type of these walls and structures for their expertise as well.
Councilor Bodden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Joe, or a general statement. If we're looking at just letting that sand dune block the wood allowance is basically what we're talking about. I think we got to look at how does that affect people when they have to replace their walls along the beach. What other access do they have? Like if they can't bring equipment down there to fix their walls, that should be a consideration, right? Because you can't just say tough luck. You can't fix your wall, or, you know. So there may be, but that should be part of the conversation, I think, also.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, providing access to the general public that require to maintain their wall.
Right.
Could be walls or beach walls, right, Councilor?
Yeah. Yes, the beach walls. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor?
To Councilor Bodden's point, I think, you know, maybe if a machine needs to be 25 feet wide, right, you can use 40 of the 66 feet, but you can't use it all. Joe, I just wanted to point out one thing. The report says could be more maintenance, and I'd always rather spend the money up front and not have that. But I don't think, what it doesn't say, it doesn't guarantee that. So, for example, you do that knuckle, you put the armor stone there, you let sand go up against it, plant seagrasses on it. Doesn't mean that it is going to be more maintenance. They're laying out that it could be more maintenance. The other thing that we haven't talked about is, you know, if you look at that diagram and you go down there, the part of the steel wall that's missing is about, and I think I asked Matt this, is about, was it 60 meters, 65 meters. But that's right in the middle of a long run. That's not the area that's going to, that's the area that, if you divided it into thirds, right? The area down below that hasn't caved in is the area that takes the most force. So you got to think about this thing as you're doing a third of this run. So the top end, it's never been touched, and it is all sand. The middle is this, so I think it can take a number 2, number 3. Where we might be in trouble is down the road, the first 60 meters from the water's edge. As you go up higher, there's less pressure, there's friction, there's all of that stuff. So this may not be the end of Pleasant Beach. So I think you know, 2 and 3 make sense, but be prepared, you might get some number 1 in a few years.
Joe, did they look at the structure that is still remaining, still standing? Did they look at that at the same time to see if it's rotted where we don't see it? Have we had it inspected? Do you know?
Through the mayor to council, we took a site visit out there, and their suspicion is that they may not have been able to put the sheet pile wall in deep enough, and that's why it failed. So that's why we still don't know if the sheet pile may be or sheet pile wall may be a non-option for us if we find out that the bedrock is too shallow. So typically your sheet pile wall is as tall, is as deep. So if you have a 4 meter tall wall, it's 4 meters in the ground. Yeah. I don't know that we have 4 meters until bedrock at the lake end. So that could be the reason why there just wasn't enough support underground to hold up that wall.
Yeah. We put our wall in back in the 80s. That's exact question they had with, and it was Willard Storm back in the day. Yeah. If you remember Willard Storm, who put the wall in, and that's what, and they had to do test drilling because obviously sand, you just, every time you dig a hole, it just keeps filling in, and they were able to, in the whole run, get enough depth. And you're right. I think more of actually was in the ground than it was sticking up, and that's why that wall has lasted this long. So, but it is starting to rot in places. There's the new owners of the area are now starting to replace parts of that wall. So, as I say, that's only in the 80s. That's not 100 years. That's what bothers me why they say that wall could last 100 years. But you're right. I think more of it after when we went down there and did that visitation with council when we did our facilities tour. It's not like it rotted and just broke off. The whole thing just collapsed. So, like there was not enough support. So, anyways, so to the amendment, if I can get the original movers, if they can move the amendment so that it allows staff to go back out and do that. You have that written down, that what we want. Okay, everybody understands the amendment? So we're going to vote on the amendment first, and the motion is amended. Questions on the amendment? All in favor? It's carried. Back to the motion as amended. Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried. Great job, guys. Thanks, staff. Item 8.4 is the filming policy. The recommendations that the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer Report 2023-173 be received, that the city clerk or designate be delegated the authority to issue film permits, approve exemptions to the noise bylaw for projects with a film permit, and execute any related documents resulting from the administration of the filming policy. That the Director of Corporate Services, Treasurer, or designate be delegated the authority to negotiate with film permit applicants the price of rates and fees for any good or service not identified in the rates and fees bylaw. That new rates and fees be added to the bylaw that establishes the rates and fees for various city services, and that the City of Port Colborne filming policy, as recommended by staff, be approved. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Bruno move that. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is the first I'm hearing of a filming policy, so I'm just curious, where did this originate from?
Through your worship to the councillor, this it was detailed in the report that a number of municipalities in the Niagara region taking up a recommendation from Niagara Region Economic Development. One was to consider the development of a film policy, which a number of municipalities in the province have done as a way to welcome the film industry into your municipality and coordinate the process of accommodating filming requests.
Okay. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, usually we have quarterly meetings with councillors, and well, we used to see the senior management meeting minutes, but nothing has been brought to council ahead of time. So I do wish a little bit better communication would have been this thing coming forward. I guess my main point is this, I'm not against this new bylaw, but we have other more important bylaws coming through the tube than this one here, like a property standards is with legal. We have lot maintenance with legal, a new vacant building registry with legal, short terms, rentals, licensing under review, and the fence bylaw under review. I just don't want this to take precedence over the more, I think, are more important bylaws in the future. So I guess it's just a note to staff, Mr. Mayor, so.
Also, for your worship of Councillor Baggio, I understand completely. Staff will take that back tomorrow and make sure, but I will say, for the public watching and for Councillor Baggio's information, it's kind of like when you get pulled over for speeding by a police officer, you kind of want to say, why don't you go out there and solve some real crimes? Isn't there a murder you could be working on? But the people who work on the murder investigations and the people who write the speeding tickets are two very different people. So I can assure you that Mr. Higginbotham's time hasn't been taken away from short-term rentals, hasn't been taken away from property standards, hasn't been taken away from some of these very pressing things that you're talking about, and that our other directors and acting directors today have their staff working away at that. I do know property standards and lot maintenance are very near and dear to my heart, as most of council, and the fire chief does have those with our law firm ready to be reviewed and sent back for council's approval. So we're hoping that that will be imminently before you. I'm not sure if possibly you could give an email update to council on the timing of that in the next couple of days, chief. And I'll leave, and I appreciate the commentary, and staff are aware of that.
Okay, Councillor Baggio, anything further?
No, that's good, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I ended up spending more time on this than I thought today on the film policy. I'm very much for it, and great job, Craig, that we have it. When I read it on the weekend, I thought, wow, this is not easy to apply for. And there's a lot of things you got to do and a lot of hoops. And when I looked at page, what is it here? I guess page 6, you know, it's got one thing is 4 business days, another is 7, another is 14, another 16 is another 5, one's 10, one's 20, one's 21, like a lot of categories. And notwithstanding, if you're a film producer, you're not going to use all of them. So I said, you know, at least could we shrink this down? And so I thought, you know what? It mentions at the start that Toronto and Hamilton are the two that have the most filming in Ontario. So I went on the net, I called the Hamilton Film Office, and I said, I got 4 questions for you on the rates. What do you charge versus what we charge? And how many issues do you have? And so the other thing I looked at is, so the clerk's going to do this, the film liaison officer is going to do that, or it's a designate, and I thought there's got to be a simpler way. So Hamilton, so we need 4 days, Hamilton needs 2 days to produce a permit. No, sorry, that's the application, is 4 pages for us, 2 for them. We arrange from 5 days to 21 days. They basically, other than police and fire and a road closure, 48 hours, you get your permit. And how they do that is, one, I thought, well, yeah, you got a department for it, right? So you got somebody just doing that stuff. But at the end of the day, they also have way more applications. So young lady on the phone who happens to be from Smithville, who happened to tell me that Niagara gets all these applications, but nobody comes here because it's all over the board and some people don't have a filming policy. So we solved half the problem. And so I really wanted to get to the point of our permit cost is $175, theirs is $68. We charge staff time out at $85, they charge $40. We do a minimum 2,500 minimum impact film projects. They have a discussion with the film company, decide what it is, and they empower the film officer. We have some council requirements approval here. They do delegated authority, right? You know, here's the list of rules, you obey them, I'm the permit issuer, here's your permit. So I just think that there's, they don't have any security deposit because people come back, they've not had any issue. We want 5,000. I don't want to make it tougher, I want to make it easier and streamlined. So I guess what I want to suggest is if Greg could maybe, I got him a number to call Hamilton, take this great document that he's thrown everything at, and see if we could make it much simpler, much user-friendly, and more efficient so that we'll get more films. So I don't know, Mr. Higginbotham, if that's a possibility that you could sort of revamp this, but can we, I guess, pass it in principle? But I would really love to see something come back based on the Hamilton model, which seems to me to cover. It's a lot simpler. Don't even know if perhaps the point person on this is communications. That's Jasmine, who deals with filming and her own marketing and deals with actually being on the other side, having films made for us. I guess I would like another wash through this. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Mr. Higginbotham.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, we can certainly take another look at the policy with respect to what Hamilton is doing, and I think that it was a very wise move on your part to look at Hamilton and to consult them, because they, in addition to Toronto, are sort of the benchmark example that a lot of municipalities look to when setting their policies, procedures, and guidelines around filming. My only reservation would be to tighten up some of the timelines or the lead times. I'd have to certainly consult with my colleagues in other departments and divisions, because while I feel very comfortable with my own role in this process, say as the film liaison, to expedite a request and turn it around in 48 hours, I also have to be cognizant of the impact that expediency could put on other departments. So that's why I think I've been very generous with this film policy and in the type of lead times and turnaround times that I've laid out, because I'm not the one that has to fulfill them. So, but I will certainly go back and take the comments that you've given this evening and review them in line with the film policy, but also in consultation with other departments and divisions.
Councillor?
Follow up, and maybe this is more a CAO question. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention it. So I said, well, how do you do all this in 48 hours? And she said, well, the council elected to say that filming and the spin-off was important to them. And so that the film office there, the film liaison office, has an agreement with each department, supported by council and led by the CAO, that says if we think filming is important, then you as Public Works or you as bylaw, or you must agree that you're going to have this back in 48 hours. Now, again, that's not for somebody like a road closure. That's not for the chief with a fire permit, or if there's pyrotechnics. But it's interesting to me that they just elected to say this is important to us, and they signed interdepartmental agreements to say that that would do it. But what I found really amazing was she told me there are others that work in the film industry that live in Niagara but work elsewhere, and film producers are finding Niagara hard to grapple with, because either they don't have a policy or they have too many rules and steps in it. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And the last one, besides not needing council approval, the film liaison officer, so if you want to shut down a block, a street, the film liaison officer says there's 12 houses on it. She goes on the GIS and she says to the production company, you got to go around to these places and get them to sign off. Well, they do it a lot easier than this policy suggests. So you go out, you knock on the door 3 times, nobody answers, that's marked down. You get yeses, that's marked down. You hand it back in, the film liaison officer decides. If you haven't had 3 films shot on that street and they come back with, let's say, 9 yeses, 2 undecided, and 1 never responded, the film officer just makes the decision and the street has filming on it for that week. Again, every single line that we did, they've done, but they've shaved it and made it simpler. So I'm just really keen on, I think this is a great thing, but I think if Niagara's not doing a great job, there's an opportunity here for us as Port Colborne. So yeah, so I guess I'd like to see this come back ultimately.
We can get to that. Yeah, go ahead, Sierra.
So through your worship to Councillor Bruno, this is all great points, and I'll defer to Mr. Higginbotham on some of these, but I support this policy because in the absence of the policy, we have nothing at all. We are working on delegated authority. The clerk and I have plans to bring a delegated authority by law to council next meeting, I think, if we can get it next meeting, if not, probably in November. That sort of lays out a situation where a planner can sign a document that normally has to go to council in order to expedite some kind of an application, or the chief engineer, the public works director can close a road for an emergency without calling an emergency council meeting, and so on. We certainly don't want to act instead of council or in council's stead, but we do want to make processes easier for people who are caught up in those processes. On the whole other side, we want to balance the impacts on the existing residents, the existing businesses. So some of these we're taking our first sort of foray into, and knowing that, I'm not kidding when I say when we had Handmaid's Tale here, which was one of our first recent experiences, there were some complaints. There were some people who had upheaval or didn't know what was going on or didn't feel like they were informed enough, or were afraid for their safety because there were military vehicles as part of the production and they weren't aware that there was a production and so on. So we're kind of trying to find that balance. And I think that maybe one of the best ways to proceed is to get the policy, but then improve the policy once it's in place. I would hate to be in a situation where, I use these examples in my career. The best time to have a site alteration bylaw that prevents a berm from being built with materials that aren't appropriate for it is before the berm got built, because it's just going to be grandfathered in. The best time to have an exotic animal bylaw is before the serpentarium opens, so that you can shut down the serpentarium, or regulate, I should say. So we kind of want to get this in place, and then maybe it's a case of the people who are crafting the bylaw bringing back some amendments after the fact, getting some inclusions into the city's delegated authority, because I know it's already in draft form, probably doesn't have any of these delegated authorities, but we can do further amendments once we get the structure or framework in place. And I would suggest it might even be a good option for you, Councillor Bruno, or any council member to work directly with Greg outside of a council meeting, or to propose some amendments today or the next time you see this in the public forum.
Councillor?
I'm good with all of that, and perhaps, yes, I'll talk to Greg, pass him the number, and perhaps he could come back with what you see on the City of Hamilton's film website. Thank you.
Councillor Hoyle.
Through your worship, most of it's already been discussed what I was going to bring up. I'm for it because with having this policy, we have a way of moving forward now. Yep. And I do agree, amendments as we go along, because we will have to do some tweaking. I don't know if the idea was to have all of Niagara be kind of like ideal, or we should just do it ourselves so we can benefit from it. Some of the things that Hamilton does, we have to realize Hamilton's bigger than us, so they have more resources than us. So when we get to the timelines, that were proposed for turnarounds, it's probably not going to be as short as Councillor Bruno wanted to, because our staff is different, right? But I can see some tweaking on some of the rates, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Greg. Greg, are you somewhat handicapped by us looking for kind of cost recovery on staff time? Do you need some leeway in that? Because I know a lot of things were going that way now. Did that come into play, or will it come into play on this?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bodnar. That's some of the direction I wanted to receive tonight is if a review of the 3 proposed fees that we've introduced is necessary. I did have a conversation with the Deputy Treasurer and Manager of Revenue about these new fees, and we did decide that we set them, yes, maybe as higher than you would see in other municipalities. We did look at the new fees that we were setting by also consulting a fee review that was done by all the film offices in Ontario that showed the fees that they charge from everything from the film liaison's time to facility rentals. And so we established and we agreed amongst the two of us that cost recovery was going to be the basis for the numbers that you see in this in the filming policy, and which will subsequently be introduced with the amended 2024 rates and fees bylaw. So cost recovery, to answer your question, Councillor, was the basis for setting these the amounts that you see in this policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Borger.
Through your worship to Mr. Higginbottom, I like the policy and I'm glad that we have one moving forward. Actually, my question is more geared towards the CAO. So I understand you have your CAO meetings with other local CAOs of municipalities in Niagara. I'm wondering, has this ever become a topic in any of your meetings, having some type of unified policy on filming?
Well, that's a very interesting question through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, and it might be to Councillor Baguiou's point. We tend to spend time on a little bit more heavy and lofty issues than this. There has been some talk. Probably the better question is at the economic development officers level. So our ECDEV officer, who's not here today, Bram Cotton, would probably have spoken to other EDOs around Niagara about this. But I do like the idea, and it's sort of been mentioned around here, about being the first ones to act in Niagara, or among the early adopters. You know, they're filming, if you drive through Milton today, it's all ready for Christmas, and that's not because they did it early. That's because they're filming Christmas with a Kiss for the Hallmark movie channel right now in Milton. And, you know, those are the kind of things that I think our staff here have our eye on, and we have assets like most other municipalities don't have, with the canal, the lake, the beach, and even where we had our exciting production that really fell into our lap, mostly through Cirrus at the time, now London Agricultural, and Geo Rail, because they were a partner of the production of Handmaid's Tale. We sort of became a partner too. So the short answer is there hasn't really been talk among the CAO level. I can try to encourage some of that discussion. We have our next quarterly meeting in a few weeks here, and see if we want to maybe be better partners. But I also selfishly think there's a chance to be early adopters here for Port Colborne.
Councillor?
Yeah, so through you, I agree it's good to be one of the first ones to do it, but I also think there is benefit to maybe doing it collectively across the region and having those discussions and being somewhat unison in how we do that, because truly it's going to be Niagara that benefits as a whole, and maybe we can still be competitive in the pricing. Not necessarily like all of Niagara has to be the same price. Like, we can adjust our prices and maybe our timelines, but I think from the perspective of the film industry that would be coming towards here, and as I believe it was discussed in the report, is that it would make the process easier for the film if it's unified or similar in all the local municipalities. So I think in a long-term perspective, it'd be more beneficial to have some type of unified policy that is consistent across the local municipalities.
Sure, and through your worship to Councillor Borgard, I think you're right. You know, Port Colborne has so much to offer, but I think the whole region does. And I think if you want to film, you know, a scene on a beach and a scene on a vineyard, you can be in Niagara-on-the-Lake and in Port Colborne. If you want Niagara Falls and a cornfield, you could be in Wainfleet and right at the actual falls in Niagara Falls. So there is a better opportunity here to be partners and provide something that's very unique that I don't think a lot of jurisdictions in Ontario can provide. So I'll take that under advisement, and I'll approach my colleagues about that at the other municipalities.
And St. Catharines just passed theirs not long ago, their new film policy. You got to understand too, with having a film policy, it actually allows when these companies come here to receive funds through the National Film Board of Canada and the Ontario Film Board. It gives them an advantage whether, if we don't have one, they don't get as much money. So this acts in several ways. It's actually, I mean, if you look at what's been filmed in Port Colborne, I mean, a lot of people don't know this. We had a D-Day invasion on Nickel Beach filmed here one summer. We had an Indigenous, I'm not sure if it was a War of 1812 reenactment, but they came in on a calm day to Nickel Beach in period canoes and garb. In fact, a couple of guys I grew up with when I went to school in Wainfleet, that family were part of this because they're Indigenous, and they were part of that whole reenactment. This came about really back before a lot of the staff wasn't here, back in 2019 when Handmaid's Tale, early 2020 was here. Scott and I and some other senior staff met with the people over at the Handmaid's Tale. That's the one thing they talked about. Get this. That goes back then. Then we had the pandemic hit and things happened, some staff turnover. Then Greg and Gary's department have taken this on to really come back here. But this has been in the works for a while. And it's really at the request of filmmakers. We had Salvage Kings come in and did a TV show, which I've seen about 4 times, with regards to the Robin Hood and taking down the old elevator. So these things are happening a lot here, but this will give us a leg up, and I do agree in having almost a Niagara-wide, being very similar. I think each municipality will have their different takes on certain aspects of this just based on their size and resources, but I think you're right, if we can all be fairly similar, it's because I don't think we're really in competition with our fellow municipalities. I think we can all enhance different things of different shows with what aspects of what we have here in each municipality to offer. Whether it's, you know, is it a winter scene in Niagara-on-the-Lake or a farm scene in Wainfleet or whatever it may be, an industrial scene at Robin Hood in Port Colborne. I mean, we can see that a beach scene in Port Colborne could be maybe a summer love story on your Hallmark channel there, Mr. CAO, that they use our beach on. I mean, that's right. There you go. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But this was asked by the film industry to us directly to come up with this. So staff, that's why staff has done this. They were asked that question and they came forward. So I do support this, and I think that we'll be able to see more things happen within our city. And remember, the movie made back in the old Loblaw store after it closed down, using they were out in the lake on the old gas. Chad Everett was the star, and they used the sound studio which they built was at the old Loblaws where the 7-Eleven is, and it was Creature from the Deep or something with regards to the creature coming up in it was supposed to be the ocean, but they used the old Telesis was the gas drilling rig out in Lake Erie. So that goes back to the 80s. So a movie's been made here for quite a while. So anyways, thank you, Greg. Any further questions to staff on this? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Good job. Good job, Greg. Thanks. Chad Everett. He liked the Belmont Hotel. Yeah, yeah. Next is item 9.1. This is actually coming back, Council, just for your information. It has to do with the original letter received that Councillor Aquilina wanted us to support. and then we delayed it because the region was having their memorandum that is attached to this called Support for Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, Municipal Code of Conduct recommendation. So we're really dealing with two of those pieces that tie together. So if I can have item 9.1 moved by Councillor Aquilina, seconded by Councillor Beauregard, that we support both of these motions. Is that all right, Councillor Aquilina? And do you have anything to add? You're fine. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? And this is to support. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Aquilina. Item 9.2. Is correspondence from the region with regards to their motion for equity, diversity, inclusion, and the damaging impacts of hate and intolerance. I have Councillor Aquilina wanting to put that on the floor. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's in relation, I think, to 9.1, as it speaks to, I think, code of conduct of the public as well as council. So I would like to support this as well.
Okay. Councillor Baggy, would you second that for Councillor Aquilina? Thank you. Any further questions or comments? And this is in support, council, instead of receive. All in favor? That's carried. .4 is from the town of Fort Erie regarding the region's 2024 operating budget levy. It was a motion that was put on the floor from September the 25th with regards to the Niagara Regional increase, tax increase and water levy increase. We just did water sewer today at Public Works, talked about that. Councillor Bagu and Hoyle, or actually I'm going to go to Councillor Bagu. They're the only two that asked for this to be pulled. Councillor Bagu, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be able to read it out loud.
Yeah, you can read that. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. The Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie at special meeting September 25th, 2023 passed the following resolution. Whereas the Niagara region taxes from a significant portion of the overall tax bill that is issued by the local area municipality, and whereas the Niagara region approved a 7.58% increase to the Niagara regional operating budget levy, 8.59% increase to the water and wastewater levy, and a 5.5% increase to the waste management levy, which outpaced the ability to pay and affordability to our local taxpayers. And whereas the Niagara region and local area municipalities recognize that the post-pandemic economy, market inflation, and housing shortages are a reality which have driven up costs for basic housing and food above the means of many residents. Therefore, be it resolved that the Niagara Regional Council be requested to assure the region's 2024 operating budget levy be approved at or below the current rate of inflation, 3.7%, as a responsible affordability measure for the residents of Niagara, and that this resolution be circulated to the region and all local municipalities for their support and endorsement, Mr. Mayor. And I can make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to support and endorse this.
Okay, if I could have Councillor Hoyle, would you second that?
I will.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Bagu? Councillor Hoyle?
I would just like to echo what was read. In reality, all that Fort Erie is really asking is just staying with a rate that's comparable to inflation. And you can see the rates that the region came out with, and they're way higher than projected inflation. So it's like it's gonna hurt everyone, so I'm for it.
Yeah, just to let council know that the numbers that are on here, yeah, well, and they're not, technically they're not approved. They're approved in principle at the Finance Committee, which Mayor Redekop chairs, but they haven't been set yet. That actually has to be set at a council meeting. So we've had budget meetings. We actually have another one Thursday night, another budget meeting. So those are coming forward. So these numbers, although tentative, based on conversation in Public Works today, you may see some of these change, but you're right, we have to get things done. Water, wastewater, that was a topic of a 2.5-hour discussion this morning at Public Works with regards to the system itself. The region's system has a replacement value of $5 billion, and they had a chart today from things that are in very good shape, poor shape, and very poor shape. Things that are in very poor shape on the, I think it was the wastewater side, was about 8% of total assets that were in very poor shape. They do have a 10-year plan. We have, I think it was last year or the year before, that it was set to move forward over 10 years and what the minimum increases would be to keep those assets from basically collapsing. It's a tough pill to swallow, but I think you're seeing it all across the region with regards to water, wastewater. We know our issues in Port Colborne and what we're doing here and what our staff has done. Now they're taking it on a region-wide basis, which is all your sewer plants, your water plants, your pumping stations, your mains that are owned by the region, and then they, just to keep it from in good shape. So again, this will come back to us, but I mean, this is not a number that a lot of regional councillors are not supporting as far as what's going on. So you're going to see some pretty big discussions coming up soon. Further questions or comments? All those in favor to support, raise your hand. All those in favor to support. All those against. That's carried. $9.9 is a letter I received a couple weeks ago from an MPP, Catherine Fife, Waterloo MPP. She's the Opposition Finance and Treasury Board critic. It has to do with it has to do with Bill 21, Fixing Long-Term Care Amendment Act 2022, and to request your support for this, I'm going to go to Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the surface, this looks like an easy thing to support, and it makes a lot of sense from my age as I look at the future. But we may need some more meat on this as far as what the region does, or what's planned, or what's the best way to go. And I wonder whether we might ask either our staff or regional staff to get us that information to see what we're doing and where we should go. So I'd like to support it, but I'd like to have another set of eyeballs on this to tell us that, some of it's good, some of it's not good.
Okay, CAO, can this go back through who? Who do you want this to go? Which staff?
Sure. Through your worship, probably the easiest way to do that is through the clerk staff as a direction from council to get more information from the region. The region operates long-term care homes, obviously, in Niagara, and I think they might be the best group to decide if they want to respond with a staff report, if they could be a delegate to a future council meeting and answer questions, even on Zoom, that council might have in order to make a more informed decision about this, or even if they just want to give us the information for one of us to write a staff report, either the clerk or myself. So, but the clerk can make the initial overture as a direction from council if it's referred to her.
Yeah, we can even get the representative from long-term care down to a meeting just to answer questions. When it first came to me, Gail from my office sat and discussed it, and what would be the reasons to separate people, and, we kind of came up with a number of things, but I think we don't run that as a municipality, as we all know. It's the region that runs this, so I think getting it from them is the best way, and then maybe we add something that's going to go to the province with regards to Bill 21. So if that's okay, if we can refer it to staff, I'll take Councillor Bodner to move that. Councillor Aquilina, do you want to second that? Refer it to staff based on the CAO's comments, and then also invite a region rep to come down and speak to us on it?
Yep.
Okay, if you want to tie Councillor Davies in on that too, please. Sure. CAO, if you can send him a quick email on that. So this is a referral. Anything further to add to that you may want to have come back to us? Anything to add, or is that fine with everybody? Is that fine? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. There are no motions this evening, Council. Notices of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion? Seeing none. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board meeting of July the 18th, 2023. If I could have Councillors Beauregard and Bagu move those minutes. Are there any questions? All in favor? That's carried. And we have a recommendation arising from those minutes, the memorandum from Director of Museum and Culture, Museum Heritage and Culture Board Terms of Reference. So it's the museum as they're actually, Madam Clerk, changing their terms of reference and their name. Right, Councillor Beauregard? So what they're asking is that that we approve those. So that's item 20.1. If I could have Councillors Beauregard and Bruno move those. Are there any questions to these? All in favor? That's carried. We have bylaws. We have bylaws 21.1 through to 21.5. If I could have Councillors Elliott and Danch move the bylaws. Are there any questions to any of the bylaws? All in favor? That's carried. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle move that Council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matter. 22.1 confidential memorandum and verbal report, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. So we will not be coming back into open session on WeeStream, so we thank everybody for watching this evening, and we thank those for attending in our audience tonight, and specifically for the Isidore Sponder trophy. That was great to see a young lady come forward and receive that tonight. So at this time I'll adjourn the public portion of this meeting, and we will now proceed into in camera. Thank you.